Thank you. All right, I'd like to go ahead and call the special meeting for the Warrenton Board of Aldermen for February 15th, 2017 in session. If you would, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the first item on the agenda would be the membership to the Greater Warren County Economic Development Committee. Anybody with a comment or say anything? All right, I'll entertain a motion to rescind the previous vote to withdraw from the Greater Warren County Economic Development Committee and approve the membership period of July 1st, 2016 to the Greater Warren County Economic Development Committee.
So moved.
Second. Okay, motion made by Alderman Deloy, seconded by Alderman Shell Harvey. Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Miller,
Absolutely.
Alderman Schultz,
Yes.
Alderman Shell Harvey,
Yes.
Alderperson Casterly is absent, Alderman Ock,
Yes.
Alderman Deloy.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0 with one absent. Next item on the agenda would be to approve the mayor's appointment of Mike Shell Harvey to the Greater Warren County Economic Development Committee and appoint John Miller as an alternate.
So moved. I'll second that.
Motion made by Alderman Deloy, seconded by Alderman Schultz. Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Schultz,
Yes.
Alderman Shell Harvey,
Yes.
Alderman Ock,
Yes.
Alderman Deloy,
Yes.
Alderman Miller.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0 with one absent. All right. Next item would be public education and I-70 tolling, and I know we will have discussion on this. So I'll open it up.
Well, first off, I hope everybody had a chance to read the, I know it was a volume of information from from the meeting I attended last Friday in regards to tolling. But basically, it should give you all the information that is going on both from the MoDOT aspect of it. I think theirs was about 20 pages long, and that used to be, that's on their website, or used to be, most of it was. But you know, there are a couple things on there that I think should be called out. One of which is if you go to page 20, and primarily they're talking, you know, it's all about I-70. And the big thing is that the rest of the state may not think they have a vested interest in this if it happens in I-70. But if you go to the page 20, on the bottom line, the second paragraph, talks about MoDOT conducted a two-phase tolling feasibility study in 2005 and 2002 and 2005, and it identified a handful of projects that would be possible in a tolled environment, including I-70, I-44, and U.S. Route 71, which is now I-49. That's the one that goes from Kansas City to Arkansas. And so even though you hear that it is just an I-70 issue, it really isn't. And so I think the group we have working, and there are, I would like to recognize some members from the Greater Warren County Economic Development Group, but also some people that are working on this tolling issue. Gary Carter, Dan Robb, and Jim Ledbetter are here, and they're very instrumental in what's going on with the tolling issue. If you'll notice, I just give you a handout tonight as to really where we're at with the Missourians Against Toll Roads, what has been done, the campaign plan, committee organization, and then our next steps. So, if there's anybody that can make it, Friday, there will be another meeting Friday at Frumpy Joe's at noon in Jonesburg. The amount of work that's going on behind us, we have one shot to stop this, really. And Warrenton has a big investment in this issue with this $15 million interchange that we want to do. If I-70 would become a toll road, what kind of effect would that have on that? So that's one of the reasons that I've really gotten more involved in it and trying to bring everything back to the board and to Warrenton on what's going on with it. I know we talked about one of the things we definitely want to do is make both our billboards available to this issue. And what I've gotten from our city attorney is that since this is not a popular vote issue, we can take a stand on it on our billboard, since it is basically an issue that's taken place in the House of Representatives and the Senate at Jeff City. So I think it's not something we really have to decide on the wording tonight, but I think it's something that we need to approve and make available, those two billboards, and for this message. As you know, if you read everything, you know Representative Carlew from the west side of the state, he's the one that introduced Bill 155, but he's kept from Independence westward out of it. So basically, Independence, Kansas City, and all that, they're going to take out of the tolling that part of the road. Likewise, if that happens, we hear from Mayor Slay, Commissioner Stenger, who is a St. Louis County supervisor, and St. Charles County Commissioner Steve Ellman. They, of course, want to keep their cities and counties out of it. So right now it's sitting like it would be from Forest Hill to Missouri to Independence. And basically that section of Interstate 70 that will become toll road, we're supposed to pay for all the maintenance of highways and bridges in the whole state of Missouri. And I think what we need to relay to people is that this is the most unfair way of doing things, putting the load on the rural communities along that stretch of highway, because everybody knows every truck that hauls anything down that interstate, it's going to cost them more. It's going to cost the people that live here and work in St. Louis, or the people that work in Odessa or live in Odessa and work in Kansas City. It's going to cost them more every day to go to work. So basically, I think our job is educate the voters out there to get them to contact the people in Jeff City, be it the Senate Transportation Committee or the House Transportation Committee, and let them know where you stand on it. Now, this is going to be something either over the phone or writing letters, but let them know what an unfair proposition you think this is. Our representative, Bart Corman, is working hard against this proposal. Likewise, Jeannie Riddle, our senator, she is working very hard also. But they need our help. They need all the help they can get. I don't know, Jim, Gary, Dan, if you all have got anything you'd like to add to it, or anything that I missed, or something that you want to update us on, I would invite you guys to the podium to say anything if you.
Help us educate the public.
We'll open it up to the public. I guess we can't we? I mean,
It's fine, it's an open meeting. If you would just come down and state your name at the moment at the podium.
My name's Jim Ledbetter.
What was that again?
Jim Ledbetter.
Okay.
You want to say it again? I am a local business person here for a few years, and my main concern is economic development, has been. It will certainly affect the economic development along our corridor. In conversation that our consultant has had, with certainty, they're obviously very concerned about the development and furthering their development if tolling were to come on to I-70, their increased cost. And it would pretty much affect our ongoing economic development all the way down the corridor. We're very concerned about that. The bill that we have currently is House Bill 155, which is for a public-private partnership. The public-private partnership is where it really gets interesting, because they bring in a private partner that will virtually buy a stretch of our highway. And typically that private partner is from a country outside of the United States. So far, most of the private partners one's been from Spain, from France, from Australia. We see a lot of those type businesses moving into America and buying our infrastructure. And typically it's not short term. It's usually 40 years is what we've seen on the purchases. When they buy that strip of interstate, they'll come in and they'll buy it for construction, and boy, they are usually Johnny on the spot for their construction. They get that done rapidly. And then they start their tolling. And once they get their tolling going, then they're also in charge of all the maintenance on the highway. You can't call the state because they don't maintain it. They don't do the rest stops, they don't do any of those things. But in the background, while this is circulating, they also have a trust company in the background usually. And that trust company takes that interstate they just purchased and they package it in investment trusts, which they're going to sell to pension plans and retirement trusts. And when they sell that based on income, suddenly they've got all their investment back and made their money on it. And then a few years later, we're seeing these interstates, these projects go bankrupt because they don't really care. They've made all their money back. It's almost like the movie The Big Short, where you saw the toxic mortgages that were packaged and they sold derivatives. And that is exactly what's happening today with those public-private partnerships. And it's all over the internet, and we can provide you with web addresses that you can go out and take a look at what's going on out there. Texas has had one that filed bankruptcy. Indiana next door had one that filed bankruptcy. Same partners that we're looking at that are bringing money into Jeff City right now that are wanting to buy this highway. So when you're looking at this toll road, battling it, you're not just battling tolls. You're also battling the fact that when they create this public-private partnership out there, that they can move into the state under that guise, and they can go against us and buying our highways and buying our infrastructure. They're even buying water supplies and coming in, and usually when they buy those type utilities, suddenly the water prices go up. It's something that's going on in a lot of places. So the public-private partnership is what it's under House Bill 155, so it's really kind of a double-edged sword, but it certainly brings tolling into Missouri in a big way, and it can bring it in on any of the roads in the state of Missouri. Does that give you an idea? Any other questions on it, or?
Well, I think we, and you kind of touched on it. I think one of the reasons why they're doing the private-public partnership is because of ODOT doesn't have any money to be able to do it themselves, so they've got to bring someone in. I mean, they just don't have the funding to be able to do it themselves.
You know, that's a real interesting point, because the national, or the Highway Federation just gave them $4 billion. They had divested themselves of roadway because they're the seventh largest roadway they have the seventh largest amount of roadway in the United States. And they gave them $4 billion under this new highway bill that passed December of 16. And they had a choice. They could either improve the #1 artery in the state that goes across, that, by the way, carries 60% of all of the goods that come into Missouri, or they could go back and pick up all of the secondary roads that they had before, which they chose to do that. And my question would be, is that a sound decision on their part? Do you go back and pick up all the secondary roads, or do you look at where your real problems exist and deal with that? They chose not to. And that was a decision on McKenna's part. He had to take that money and do what he wanted to with it, and that's what they chose to do. So I would challenge that they have money. They also have bonding capacity.
Sure they do.
And they have chosen not to use their bonding capacity either.
Also, if you wouldn't mind going into, if this is defeated this year, how long of a period do we have before it could possibly be brought up again?
It's a good point. This is strictly an experiment with Washington. This is under the Federal Highway Administration, and it's a waiver that is purely an experiment. There's only been 3 of these. So if this waiver is defeated in May, it may never come up again. Now, we do have a new administration. We don't know what's going to happen under that administration, but it's never happened under a federal highway before, so we don't really think we're going to have to face that again.
What's the new governor's position? What's the new governor's position?
You know, McKenna was in there this week, MoDOT Director McKenna, asking for $3 million to study the tolling on 70, and he said, no way, we're not going to spend any more money and on studying it, and pretty much pushed it off, and no one's really gotten I don't think anyone's got a real read on it yet. I don't know. I'd like to know myself.
Some members of our group had a luncheon with them the other day, and they came away not really knowing, isn't that right, Gary, or isn't that what David and them said, that they couldn't get a real read on him. It seemed like he was not in favor of the tolling, but he's facing a $700 million shortfall on everything, and so they said that, he didn't really take a hard stand one way or the other.
He did go to, he went to Washington, what was it, a week ago? That's when President Trump had all of the governors in from all the states, and they were supposed to bring in their list of infrastructure that they wanted to have done in their states. And I know he only traveled with one thing. He traveled with $2 to $4 billion for I-70. That's the only thing that he went to Washington with. And I don't know what transpired there. I have no idea. I saw the list from the other governors, and theirs was pretty varied. I mean, they had like 3 and 4 items that they had listed out, but he had one. And that's the value of I-70. So if something's going to come into the state from the feds, that would probably be where it's going, since he only had one on his list.
That's good news.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know if the public knows the deadline, if this thing's defeated. Did we say that?
May 15th?
Actually, I think the extension's granted all the way up to December 14th, but the session for the House is May.
That is correct. That December the 14th, they have to be shown making progress. And
If there's no significant progress being made, then it's dead
That's
on
correct.
dead in the water.
Mhm.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank all you folks for being so involved in the community against this. And Mike, you also, Mike, attending all these meetings. This isn't a difficult decision for us to make. At least I don't think it is. It's taking the same approach as Mayor Saleh or any other one that would have an interest for their citizens, even though Warrington is a small community. I have the same interests as they do. My interest is just as big as their interest. So with that being said, to serve our citizens properly, to try to protect their interests, there's no reason in the world that we shouldn't join on the wagon, I guess, if you will, and contribute however we can for the cause.
We'd ask not only that in that contribution, but to make a contribution in helping us with our consortium as we try to grow across the I-70 corridor. We're making contacts with communities all the way down I-70. We're creating a group of communities and organizations to battle this. If we don't, we have to grow as a group, and we are, and we need your help as well. So anything you can offer in that regard, we'd certainly appreciate that help as well.
And I know I've already made some phone calls to a couple other towns. and
Outstanding.
asked their mayors, so.
Thank you.
And I think it's safe to say that, they were trying, MoDOT and the powers that be and Jeff were, I think, trying to keep this under the radar because up until a couple weeks ago, there were towns and cities along Interstate 70 that were not even aware of what was going on with House Bill 155. And now I think primarily this Montgomery-Warren County group has opened some eyes down there because I know Dan's involved with all the bankers and everything that. Jim was involved with insurance people and just, contacting people along the interstate with businesses and everything. Gary and everybody, Wayne, they've all been very active in getting hold of businesses along the interstate and communities, cities. Wendy Nordwall had been involved with contacting the assessors in all the different counties along Interstate 70. So it's been really an eye-opener for some of the people west of here that weren't really aware. Like I said, they were trying to keep this under the radar, I think.
It's amazing. We just, 1 week ago, the Convention and Tourism Group at the Lake of the Ozarks found out that it was going on. And you can imagine what the I-70 corridor means to them as far as traveling to and from the lake and what the added cost would be to people making that weekend run every weekend to the lake. And you start adding that up over the course of a summer for families.
Well, look at the universities. University of Missouri, basketball, football games. They don't think that's not going to affect that? Fayette, Missouri, what is that, Central College there,
Yeah.
They're not that far off the interstate.
Central Missouri State University.
Yeah, I mean, so it's basically getting the word out and educating people on what we need to do.
Well, and I think it's, as you've already touched on it, it's a very political issue. A lot of politicians get involved to take their cut out of it. I believe Columbia is still in the talks of trying to get theirs taken out of it as well. With that being proposed, I don't quite understand why certain voices are louder than others. I think it's just because the public isn't aware of it, that there's certain groups being able to lobby for theirs not to be included. But I also understand that there's a possibility under the Private Partnership Act that it could go from border to border. It's not, I mean, they're specifying it in HB 155, but there's always a chance of that going away when the partnership is enacted.
The waiver that they received from Washington is from Highway 4061 to Blue Springs.
Correct.
So that's the extent of the tolling that they can do. We'd love to, if they were going to toll from border to border, would have been the fair way to do it. But since they're doing it in this manner, it's just totally unfair.
And if I understand everything correctly, I've been to a few meetings, not as many as Mike, and that's really what we're trying to educate everyone about, is about this waiver. Border to border, if the federal government decides that they're going to put a tolling in border to border, well, that's fair. Then everybody's on the same even playing field. But this waiver specifies, correct me if I'm wrong, between 4061 and Blue Springs, Missouri. That is totally unfair. And that is really the discussion that we're having tonight. Is that correct?
I believe at the last meeting with the director, someone said it was Port Barrel politics that was the reason that it was
Yeah, I
directed
think I remember
way.
that.
But you know, it's not just, and you can say that border to border would be fair, it would be fair, it would be fairer, but it still leaves out, you know, I-44, which a group like we have here is trying to bring economic development to this area. It puts them at a competitive disadvantage if they have to, if we have a toll road here and I-44 doesn't, and there's a, you know, a company coming from overseas or out of state wanting to relocate in Missouri, they're going to look a lot harder at I-44 if it's not toll road as opposed to I-70 if it is.
Just increased costs.
So that's
No
That's something to look at,
question
too.
about it, and I agree 100%. I'm just trying to put things in perspective. The big thing right now is what nothing in government moves quickly, and this is a test. The waiver is a test. We have to defeat the test. If we defeat the test, then we'll take on the next challenge. If the next challenge is border to border, then we'll face whatever we have to face. But to keep everything in perspective, we have to defeat this waiver.
Well, and I'll to kind of go back to something Gary asked earlier, what was the governor's opinion on this? I think it's important what the governor does feel on this actual issue, but if I remember reading right, he doesn't appoint anybody on the MoDOT director. The MoDOT director is actually appointed by a group of individuals from the House or Senate, and the governor has no effect on his job whatsoever.
No.
Can't hire or fire.
Well, but the issue is if the bill gets appointed to a committee, gets out of the committee and gets voted and gets passed, the governor still has veto power over
He does have that.
And so that's what, to me, that's what you're targeting, is if worst case scenario, and it gets to the point where he has to sign or veto, that he's in a position where he vetoes the bill. That's what you really should be after.
From people who worked in his campaign, I know he's not for it, but I think he's taken a neutral stance as of yet for some other priorities that have been presented.
I think the other thing the public needs to realize is that one of the problems with these, private-public partnerships is the profit from the operation doesn't come back to the state.
That's right.
When the city, we run water and sewer system, we expect to make a profit. When we make that profit, that gets turned back into infrastructure that we can build, we can expand. So the taxpayers are paying in for a profit, and they're realizing additional services and additional infrastructure. But when you set up one of these private partnerships, that profit is not coming back to the taxpayers of the city and the state of Missouri. And I think that's really an inherent problem with this type of setup. If you're a taxpayer and you don't want your money to leave, and you want it to be reinvested in the state, you can't go this route. You just can't.
And it was interesting at the meeting where the director came in and spoke, because he did say that tolls are one of the most expensive methods to fund your highways. And it is, and it's just what you're talking about. It is so expensive, all the costs that you have to go through.
Well, my understanding of this also is that, like any business, you're trying to make a profit. So if your costs go up, you're gonna pass those costs on to the consumer. So the consumer, the person driving up and down the interstate, really has no control or no option to go to an alternative product. So if your insurance goes up, I can go somewhere else, to a different broker or a different carrier. But in this situation, they can raise the premium of the tow, but I don't have any options in the marketplace.
It's a monopoly.
Yeah.
And if you want to look at the agreement that was signed, it's also opaque because it's a private partnership and the government does not have to show you anything.
Right.
And that's kind of a sticking point. The other side to it, that's kind of an interesting point for the county in Texas, there's a lot of tolls that haven't been collected. And those tolls are delinquent. They'd like to collect those. So in Texas, it was on the floor, and I don't know, I've got to go back and look at that, but they were trying to send it to the county assessors so that they'd be able to collect those tolls. And the assessors will have that problem.
Well, of course, now, what we've been told before is if it goes to an electronic type situation where they're reading your car.
Yep.
You get a bill, you refuse to pay the bill, when you go to renew your license, the state highway departments can play the enforcer. So they just sold a business to a private company who doesn't have collection responsibility. The state of Missouri has collection responsibility, so they didn't alleviate themselves on that operation piece either when they sold it. So, it's not even a good business model, is what it boils
It's kind
down
of
to.
crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know in Indiana, they had real problems because they sold it, Xerox was doing it, and they sold it to another company, and everything went wrong, and they couldn't collect any of the bills, and it couldn't get anything done, and the licenses couldn't get issued. They've had all kinds of problems. So it leads to other problems.
So it sounds like somebody's looking for a quick fix.
Yeah. So you can see that if we don't have tolling, we won't have to deal with all of that.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thanks for
it.
hearing.
Thanks for your
Jim.
time.
So I guess it's at that point where we need to decide where we're gonna contribute or work with this.
I think we know we're going to make 2 billboards available. And that being said, I guess will Chris have to
Do up a contract.
basically tell us what we want to put on it?
Well,
I think
yeah,
we'll have to-
I'm sorry, if you read Chris's narrative, I think his concern is that if we don't control the message, and we allow somebody else to control the message, then we're opening ourselves up for something else. If somebody wants to come along later and put, Wright City's better than Warrenton, or whatever you want to put on the billboard, we couldn't stop that. So I think what his advice is, you can do something, but you got to make sure that, I think his advice is you need to control the messaging yourself.
Right.
And I think we certainly could come up with messaging that wouldn't be counter to what the EDC wants on these billboards or any kind of agreement. We could put the messaging on that we feel comfortable.
Well, it does, controlling the message as I read it, and I talked to Chris this morning, simply means you all can vote to say, we're going to provide the rental cost of the billboards for X months. We're going to provide the cost to get the vinyls created. It doesn't mean that the message won't be the same message. It just means you will be doing it internally as opposed to providing your billboard to an outside party. It's the same thing being accomplished, but you all are just voting to do it with the funds that are available for this tolling effort. The message can be coordinated with whatever message you all choose for it to be.
So it stays our billboard.
It stays your billboard, you're just funding the cost for it.
I believe we budgeted last year 5,500 towards the
We've got
total.
$5,500 in total that we put in the budget last year for this effort. And I don't know how long a period of time that you all are considering billboards, but for 2 months, theoretically thinking maybe it's April and May, or March and April, I don't know.
March, April,
Um,
May.
March, April, probably better.
2 months of billboards and the production of 2 vinyls is $3,700. That's our cost per our contract.
I have a question for, are we talking, I know it's May 15th. This is February 15th. If we vote to pass on the billboards, how long would it take? I guess this is a question towards you, Terry, and you folks. If we did voted, how long would it take to revinyl those signs?
Usually, once we know exactly what it's gonna be within a couple weeks, they can have it prepared. And I think Mike has some insight from his meeting last Friday or at some point about maybe what that message should be. So honestly, the hardest part is going to be getting the mock-up for what we want it to look like, and then in a fairly short time, we can actually get the vinyl put up.
Okay, so virtually, is it fair to say March 15th? That gives you March 15th, April 15th, May 15th, that's 3 months?
Yeah, we
I'm
don't-
kind of directing that question to you.
If you're going to answer, you need to come to the podium, please. But you're saying the budget that you're talking about, 3,700, is just for 2 months,
2
correct?
months. Another month would be another 2,200, because you'd already have your vinyls.
Well, you're only talking about 2 months, aren't you, time you get it done?
Well, that's what I'm trying to determine.
It takes-
If we voted tonight, this is February 15th, and in 2 weeks, we had our message defined, that gives it 2 weeks to have the billboards redone. Is that a fair time frame?
Oh, I think so.
Okay, so that
Absolutely.
means the billboard would be available March 15th, virtually, maybe it's the 16th, which is March, April, and May 15th. That's 3 months.
But
Is that correct?
But that would go over our budgeted amount that we have.
We can go with the budget.
We can go over the budget.
It would just raise the budget.
A few dollars.
But you're really only talking about 2 months.
Right.
March 15th to April 15th, and April 15th to May
Right.
15th.
You're only talking 2 months.
So you're really only,
Okay.
it's only really 2 months.
We could probably get our message before
Yeah.
Maybe March 1st you could have it done. So then you
It
got
will all
2
depend
full
on how
months.
long it takes to get the message mocked up, because then production is not a lot.
Well, I think we answered the question, Dan. You're off the hook.
Well, no, I think, somebody have an idea about the message? Is that what you want to talk about, or was
Well-
Mike?
Yeah, I've gotten, I got a bad. I've gotten some guidelines from Ethan Todd on what they're saying, they would recommend. I think the main thing we want to put on there, and like I said, now we know we can say Warrenton against I-70 toll road, or however we want to put that message. I think one of the main things we want to have on there is the website that, when I talked to Ethan the other day, I think it's another week or so away before they get all that set up. So there is going to be a website that we can put on there, and it will direct people, and that's something we can put in the paper and put on the city website. Will direct them to some action. Is that about what it is, Dan, or you?
I'm Dan Robb, Jonesburg State Bank.
Thank you.
We have a bank here in town, and certainly are very concerned for both Warren County and Montgomery County. We have banks in each location. What I'd like to just add also from what Jim said is that we're not just trying to go against House Bill 155. What we think most likely more so could happen is, and unfortunately we're hearing this from a lot of people, HB 155 isn't getting any traction. It hasn't even been assigned to committee as of yet. But those of you who knows Jeff City politics knows that things get slipped in as an amendment the last 2 weeks of session. So what we're really fighting is the fact that we've got to get the public awareness and we've got to get the message out to all the people in Missouri between now and that time period. And at that time period is when we've got to be prepared to flood the switchboard. And literally, conversations between now and then, but absolutely when it comes down to where, and what happens unfortunately, is that one of these amendments gets put onto a bill that a lot of people are in favor of. I've personally done it with a banking bill that we were in favor of, and we had to kill it because an amendment went onto it that was not good for us or a lot of different folks. And so those kind of things happen towards the end of session. So the faster we can get a message, we're still gathering steam. This meeting Friday, we spent 2 hours this afternoon, a big group of us strategizing and trying to figure out how do we get this message down. We think that it's going to be called Missourians Against Tolling, not just I-70 tolling. Again, the message has got to get out that this is not just an I-70, because if we don't defeat it on I-70, then it can also be I-44, I-49, I-55, I-35, I-29. There's a lot of I's in Missouri, and what then is available. So we've got to get the message out to folks clear across the state of Missouri, not just here along I-70. Obviously, for Warren County and Montgomery County, we care about what's here in our backyard. And we know that businesses in Warrenton are going to be very dissatisfied with the potential of tolling along I-70. We know the citizens who put you all in your spots are not going to be happy. The numbers are like 40 or 50% of Warrenton citizens commute towards St. Louis. It's huge, the number of folks that go that direction. Well, people are going to stop moving to Warrenton or move out of Warrenton because they want to avoid the toll road, and they're going to go back towards Wentzville or up towards Troy or wherever it is to avoid things like
I
that.
think the last study was 82% of Warren County is commuters.
82%. So huge numbers, and I'm not trying to, it's obvious you guys, and we are so thankful of your all support and what you're talking about. The messaging, we're still gathering steam. I think we've got lots of good ideas, and why you asked me to come up was the sooner the better. And the thing is that in that letter, not only does it give a drop dead date of December or whatever it is, but it specifically talks about the end of session, gathering enough momentum. And basically it clearly says from the U.S. Department of Transportation as the extension to the waiver to the Missouri Department of Transportation, you don't get this done by the end of session, then it's a moot point. So our battle is today, it was yesterday, as soon as the information, and sadly, I've talked to bankers over in Odessa and Concordia, Marshall, Sedalia, different folks along that. I thought that was dead last year. And sadly, I do think it is an effort to just let it slide through, and then, and right now that House bill is the PPP, just to approve the PPP, public-private partnership. But then from there, where does it go?
Yeah, the amendments scare me.
Beyond.
That's
But to make it clear, we're not just fighting House Bill 155. We're fighting what could happen worse is off, let's put this over here and let them look at this and have people say it's not getting any steam. I mean, we're talking to associations. We now have probably a dozen at least different statewide associations that have spoken up and said, we will help you fight this. Because we know that the sentiment across the state of Missouri is somewhere, the last polling was 65-35. That was just tolling in general, not the PPP issue. I think you bring that into play, and I think a lot of people then start saying, we don't want to sell our backbone of Missouri to a foreign company and allow them to control what's going on there.
I wonder though, I understand the broader concept of getting everybody, but if I drive down the road and see stop towing, it's not personal. But if I see stop I-70 towing, all of a sudden it becomes very personal.
Right.
So, as we think about that, I mean, that's how I look at things, because you see a lot of stuff and you don't really think it impacts you, but that kind of sticks in your face.
Right, and I don't know that the message on each billboard has to be exactly the same. We totally agree that you all should have influence on what your billboards actually say. We hope it says stop tolling and stop I-70 tolling. What we're talking about also, though, is billboards on I-40. We need to get the billboards on I-44 as well, saying Missourians against tolling, because you all, from this white paper, that as Alderperson Schoenharvey said, that is in a white paper, that after a phone call was made to MoDOT asking them about it, within 5 minutes it was off their website and it wasn't available any longer. That was saying that being studied was I-70, I-44, I-49, not just an I-70 issue.
Questions or comments?
No, thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.
Well, it would seem to expedite this, which there's a sense for that. What I would think we'd want to do is pass some kind of motion allowing this change to occur and allowing staff allowing a final decision as to verbiage or words to be allowed to be done without constituting another meeting of the board. So if tomorrow she gets on the phone, they say, we can do this mock-up, we'll have it to you in 3 days, we don't want to let it sit there for 2 weeks
That's
till
a
we
good
have one
point,
city
Gary.
council
Agreed.
meeting. So to me, it's kind of empowering staff to say, okay, we're gonna run with this project. And Terry will contact us saying this is what we're doing, and you certainly will know what we're doing. But I don't think we need to
That's a good
delay
point.
anything by passing a motion that will require us to pass another motion.
So,
Absolutely.
So, Alderman Ock, let me ask you, how about
We got somebody at the
the
podium.
use, I'm sorry, go ahead. Gary.
Sorry to
Apologize.
interrupt. It occurred to me that, we're asking for your help.
Introduce yourself first.
I'm sorry, Gary Carter, and I own a business in Warren, Kent, just outside the city limits of Warrenton here. And, we feel the pain already. But it occurred to me, and I think Jim and Dan both did an outstanding job to help bring you guys up to speed. It occurred to me that we need to tell you too, what we've done already, and we need some funding, and I'm not ashamed to ask for money. But we've hired 2 lobbyists in Jeff City already. One of them's been employed for a while now by us, and then and the other one has come on board recently. And then most recently, and Mike, you've met Ethan a couple of times. You've talked with him, political strategist, and he's working with 2 other firms to help us develop the message, and we're going to take it through social media. And so we have this plan put together already, and these guys are not cheap. I'll just say that. So we've already been able to, with some help, to front the money to pay these guys, and so we have a debt to pay, and that's like I said, I'm not ashamed to ask for money. We need some help to pay for this. I mean, we're convinced, we're strongly convinced that this is a very serious issue for all of us, and that's the best way we know. We have these lobbyists up and down the halls in Jeff City every single day. They're on the floor, they're listening, they're communicating, and they're keeping us updated. So that's costing us money. And then these strategists, they're developing the messages and helping us develop the, to set up a 501c6 so that we can collect the money and someone to manage that. And we have a treasurer. So, I mean, we're not just doing this on the fly, it's being done correctly. So I just wanted to let you guys know about that. And so we really appreciate you guys taking the time tonight to come together and to listen to us and give us an opportunity to talk with you and to consider helping the community in this way, and also the state. Because if we can kill it now and we kill it dead, then it's a dead issue for the state. But once it starts somewhere, it's going to spread like fire throughout the state, and we'll be at a disadvantage.
Who currently is employing the lobbyist? Is it the EDC or is it your separate group?
We started with the EDC, but that's before we realized how serious it was getting.
Mm-hmm.
And now that we are forming this group, and Ethan's the one that's helping us with the 501c6, that will be moved to that entity.
I mean, to me, I'm reading, as you're talking, I'm reading through Chris's notes, and it's a little bit unclear on the lobby side. So if we were to consider doing something you're asking for money over and above that, I would think we need to have Chris give us more clarification at the meeting, because he's talking about a written agreement with the EDC or directly with the lobbyists, but when you're going through, there's different parties involved. What does that
That's right.
mean in terms of what he's saying? So,
As of right now, it's through the EDC.
okay.
As we solicit the help of corporations and whatever, then we saw the need to set up the, I think we're calling it Missouri against tolling, I think it is. But we see the need to do that. But right now, it's been through the EDC.
And that's something we can certainly put on the agenda for next meeting.
Sure.
And talk through with Chris thing there, and the board to consider if we wanted to do anything over and above the signage. I'm sure you'd take a check anytime, but you know what I mean, we have to jump through the hoops, because I don't understand that. If that's the direction the board wants to go, I think the thing we can really decide tonight is to go ahead and improve on the signage piece, for sure.
And I think also, because what we discussed, I mean, 5,500 was what we budgeted, going over 400 is not bad, but going over a bigger amount, we'd have to look at the budget and see what we could be able to do,
I
discuss it as a
understand.
group as well.
And we appreciate the signs. I mean, we definitely appreciate that.
Not saying we're not, it's just,
But,
it would be
yeah.
a little something we'd have to talk a little more
But
about.
we also have this other issue, we have to pay these guys. And a lot of us in the EDC, we bucked up some money and we're fighting with everything we have.
I agree. I
But
can't
we,
remind Ethan that he was raised in Warrenton. He should work
Give
for
us a
free.
discount.
He should give us the Warrenton discount.
Okay,
What is good?
anything else? Any other
Any questions for Gary?
I don't. Thanks,
Any
Gary.
comments?
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks to all of you guys.
So, Alderman Ock, just to kind of prove what you were saying, wording of a motion to use the billboards with a message being either used or approved through city staff and council, legal counsel? That'd be-
That works.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to use the billboards with the message being created and approved through the city staff as well as legal counsel.
I'll make
Sorry?
that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Alderman Schultz, seconded by Alderman Miller. Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Shell Harvey,
Yes.
Alderman Ock,
Yes.
Alderman Deloy,
Yes.
Alderman Miller,
Yes.
Alderman Schultz.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0 with one absent.
And Mayor, just to
Yes.
clarify, you all are in support of as quickly as we can get that message done and the vinyls created to get those up?
That is correct.
Yes.
Terry,
Yeah.
quick question. What was the 2 months you say for both billboards? What was the?
$3,700.
$2,200, what did I do with my paper? It's $2,200 for the billboard lease for 2 months, so it's $1,100 a month. And then the 2 vinyls are $1,500.
Which comes to a total of 37, correct?
But we have those billboards under
So
lease for the whole
37.50.
year, right?
Okay, I had that.
Already?
We pay it by month.
By month, okay.
Yeah.
So in theory, the budget already has the monthly charges in it.
Well, it doesn't in the general fund. We can't pay this out of tourism.
Make sure I had it.
Okay, so they're being paid out of tourism.
They're being paid out of tourism, but if we're gonna use them for this purpose, then we're gonna need to pay that out of our general fund.
Okay, I see what
Okay.
you're saying, okay.
All right, any more questions or comments? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Majority, we are so adjourned.